Right, so if you were one of the physios who genuinely cares about your work, you're one of the ones who invests thousands in your professional development, you go to CPD seminars, you do your very best to stay up to date with research because ultimately you care about clinical excellence because you want to provide the best service possible to your patients so that they can get the best outcomes. That means that you're very service driven, you're life is largely centered around being of service to others. And I think that's one of the things that brings us all into physiotherapy, But if you're one of them physios who, genuinely cares about the profession and your expertise and providing the best results for your clients, then first to say, I respect you, you're one of my people. But the second thing I'm going to say is potentially going to grind your gears a little bit. And I guess I don't mean to say this to be dramatic or just to kick up dust for no reason, but the reason I say this is because it's something that I wish I was informed and realized when I was far earlier in my career, even when I was studying. And that is to say that being a good physio, being the best physio you can possibly be, spending money on professional development, trying to stay up to date with research, doing the things that ultimately should make you a good physio. Unfortunately, that does not correlate with you having a good career or you seeing progressions in your career that are linear, and that disconnect between doing what we are all taught we should do to be a good physio and the actual career progression that most see, it's massive. And that gap is something that I wish I was informed about earlier. But let's speak about why that is and some things that you can do to close that gap so your expertise and your outcomes in terms of financial earnings, in terms of career progression, can become a lot closer. Okay, so we were all basically told the same story in university, that we have to align ourselves with pursuing clinical excellence. Ultimately, that's the goal. Once we graduate, you have to continue studying, you have to continue going to CPD events, and you have to try your best to become the best possible clinician you can be. And I agree with that. I think at a base, of course, the physiotherapy industry moves ridiculously quick. You have to stay up to date with current research, and you have to go to seminars, you have to do your CPD to maintain your clinical skills 100%. But I think the failing in what we were exposed to in university was not that idea that you should pursue clinical excellence, because okay, that is a thing for sure, but the failing in my mind is that we were not told directly, but the implicit assumption is if you're told in university to aim towards clinical excellence, you're going to assume that the lifestyle that this creates for you once you've achieved somewhat clinical excellence, you would assume that that is like a lifestyle that fulfills all of the needs that you have, be it financially, be it freedom, whatever the case may be. But unfortunately, in the modern world we live in and in the modern physio system that we have to work in person, that's not the case. Like, clinical excellence very rarely equates to a freedom style of life where you're able to, work from your laptop, you're able to choose when you work, you're able to earn more than, like, let's say a 40, 50, 60K a year job. And I think that's the disconnect where a lot of physios find themselves, especially those who've graduated within the last 10 years, that you were sold this dream that if you pursue clinical excellence, you will have the status and the lifestyle that you want, when in the actual fact, in the world that we live in today, that's not the case. So yeah, if you're feeling this disillusionment with the profession and you feel that it hasn't worked out to be what you thought it should be, you're not alone. So let's talk about what being a good physio actually looks like and what the outcomes of that, quite likely will be for you. So you spend thousands every year on CPD. You give up your weekends and sometimes your evenings to attend these courses. During your week of work, you come in early, you stay late, you do extra reading in the evenings and on the weekends. And then it comes to the end of the month and you look at your pay slip, and unfortunately, nothing has changed. That is genuinely one of the most demoralizing things about the physio profession. The fact that you can spend thousands on your professional development in any given year and it will have little to no impact on your actual take home pay at the end of the month. Think about this for a second. You can spend thousands in a year on your CPD. You can give up your evenings, you can give up your weekends, you can give up all of your, mental space and energy to really try become the best physio you can be. But ultimately, you'll be earning the same as a physio who, potentially hasn't opened a book since their final physio exams. So yeah, let that sink in for a little bit, that your individual pursuit of clinical excellence isn't necessarily going to be rewarded, in terms of the financial take home at the end of the month. Um, so unfortunately, the in-person physio system that we are operating in, it does not reward like clinical excellence. And I'm not really sure it ever has. So a little anecdote about a conversation that really made this idea land for me. So I was speaking to an NHS Band 5 physio from Northern Ireland, and he graduated a couple of years ago, and he was finally getting to the stage in his professional life where he was feeling comfortable in his role. He felt he was, progressing towards clinical excellence. He was getting good results with his patients, and he was enjoying his role. But what he told me, it kind of shocked me a little bit. He said that after tax, what his hourly earning worked out as a Band 5 physio, it worked out 70 pence more than what he earned as a dishwasher in university. Like 70 pence per hour more than a dishwasher in university. Like that really took me aback and solidified that point that the pursuit of clinical excellence does not necessarily mean like an improved lifestyle or more financial earnings. Like after 4+ years of education, after doing thousands of hours of placement, after working for 2 years as a physio, taking on tons of responsibility, he's only earning 70 pence per hour more than he was as a dishwasher in university. So I think that solidifies the point. I'm not, trying to say this to sound dramatic, but ultimately I'm just bringing this up and bringing it to your attention because unfortunately nobody speaks about this honestly. Here's the thing though, this is a structural problem within the physiotherapy industry. The current physio system rewards one thing more than anything else, that is volume. So the more patients you see, the more hours you work, the more outputs that you have, the more you'll get back. It's not about the depth of your knowledge, the quality of your care. It's not about the fact that you spend thousands of hours and thousands of euro developing your skills so you can help people to the best of your ability. You're not paid for being better. Ultimately, you're paid for doing more. And I think once you realize that, it is a bit of a stark realization that the current physio industry is this kind of conveyor belt model where you're trying to see as many people, you're trying to work as many hours, and that's the only way that you can get ahead and earn a decent living. Um, so if you're at a point where you're feeling some degree of frustration that with all this effort that you're putting in, you feel you're not being fully rewarded and valued for it, you're not imagining that. You're simply operating in a system that it was never designed to reward you for how hard you work or the level of results you get. It was purely designed to reward you based on your outputs and the amount that you worked. And I hate to say it, but here is where it gets even worse. Like, even if you push through, even if you do work harder, even if you take on more clients, even if you work longer days, ultimately in the in-person physio model, there is a ceiling that you simply can't push through because your income is tied to one, your time, but also your physical presence. That's it. That's the way the current physio model is set up. You cannot scale unless you open your own clinic. And that obviously involves taking on staff, taking more financial risk, taking on more financial overheads, more stress. And even then, quite likely you'll just be trading one set of problems for another set. I've spoken to many clinic owners over the past 12 months, and some have told me that since they've opened their clinic, they have been far more stressed out and they've worked far more than they ever did as a junior physio. And some of them, unfortunately, as the way things go, they end up earning less as the clinic owner than they ever did as a junior physio. So to assume that the stairway to heaven is to just work as a junior, then work as a senior, then eventually open your own clinic and all your problems will be solved. I think it's important that you question those assumptions because quite often that pathway doesn't work out. There is inherent risk in opening, especially in in-person business, because there's so many overheads that are involved in that. Um, so yeah, just giving you the awareness not to, freak you out or think to throw you off course, but just to question your assumptions of where you want your career to progress and how you see it developing over the next few years. So if you're currently feeling stuck, be it financially, be it in terms of your professional progression, be it in terms of the energy and motivation you have for your job, I want you to hear this. So it's not because you're not a good enough physio, it's not because you're not working hard enough. It is a structural issue, and it's due to the structure that you're currently operating within. The system is set up in a way where it makes it almost impossible to be rewarded for the things that actually make you a good physio. And I think that that's something that's worth being honest about, because once you understand that the structure, that the problem is structural, it's not a personal problem, that's empowering. That means that you can take back control and that you can actually do something about that. Now, listen, I'm not going to tell you that you should throw away all of your in person work and that you should become an Instagram influencer, because that's not what this is about at all. But all I'm alluding to is the subtle shift that's happening within the physio industry that's echoing a lot of what we've seen in the personal training industry over the last 10 or 15 years, where practitioners are realizing that their skills, they don't have to be destination or location dependent, that they can actually utilize their skills online to provide a really, really good service. And just to give you a little bit of like logical backup and I suppose my reasoning for how well physio can transition online. Ultimately, if you're a up-to-date practitioner, like in the physio space, I think you'll agree with the idea that the two main things that provide the most benefit for our patients are exercise and education. And those are two things that can be seamlessly packaged and delivered in the online context to provide really, really good results. So there's no reason why you can't apply those physio skills in the online setting to access all of the benefits of working online. And I suppose what this means for physios is that for the first time ever, they're able to step outside of that in-person physio system and instead start getting paid for their like the value that they provide. They can start working with clients all over the world. They can work from their laptop. They can travel freely. There's no income limit because they're ultimately, owning their own business. But the crucial difference between owning an online business and an in-person business is the overheads are far, far lower, almost zero for an online business. I myself, I've been working fully online for about 5 years now. I've helped over 450 clients exclusively online, and I've been able to access a lot of these benefits in terms of having a lot more freedom in terms of finances, in terms of location, in terms of my own schedule. And I'm by no means saying this to be like, oh, look at me, I'm great. I'm purely saying this to bring this idea to your awareness, because I know for damn sure there's so many physios out there that still don't even know that this is an option. Here's the one reframe that I want to leave you with from watching this video. So the problem is not with your ability as a physio. It never was. The problem is the way that you've been applying your physio skills. You've been trained to pursue excellence. You've invested in that. You've worked really hard to get to a place of, somewhat clinical excellence. But the missing piece is learning how to apply those excellencies and those physio skills in a way that actually rewards you for it. You don't have to leave the physio profession. You don't have to start in a new industry from scratch just to try and make a decent living. You just need to learn how to apply your physio skills in a different way, in a way that actually rewards you. And honestly, that is a far more solvable problem than many physios think. If what I've been saying today has resonated with you and you found yourself subtly nodding along with what I've been saying and you find yourself thinking like, oh shit, he's verbalizing how I feel, then you're in the right place. You know, this is something that has been bubbling in our industry for a while, and it has now finally come to the surface. So you're definitely not alone in the way that you're feeling. And crucially, there is a path forward that doesn't involve you grinding out even harder in the current in-person physio model that, you know, we've already defined throughout the course of this video is a broken model. I've put together a free training that walks you through exactly how the online model works and what a access point for you can be in taking your initial steps online. It breaks down the exact step by step that I would use if I was starting online again. So you will find the link for that free training in the description below. When you get a chance, definitely pop over there and have a look at it. And if it sparks anything in you, or any questions come up, I'm always open to have a conversation on Instagram at the remote physio. Feel free to shoot me a message there, and I will speak to you soon.